Oh, it's so frustrating. You work with your hive all year and it doesn't make it through the winter. You open up the lid, nothing. No activity, very few bees, and the ones that are in there are dead. How many beekeepers actually lose colonies every year? I was wondering about that, and I decided to do some research and find out how many colonies die or perish in a given year. Let's talk about it today.
Hi, this is Ray. I just want to let you know that when I recorded this video a few weeks ago, the latest data on hive losses had not come in. But now that the winter is on its tail end and commercial beekeepers are starting to send their colonies over to California for pollination, they're discovering losses that are much higher than is even mentioned in this video. Some commercial beekeepers are at 70 and even some reports of 100%. And so major losses is even a concern that maybe we have a shortage of bees early this spring. So just keep that in mind as you're watching this video. And so some of these numbers are a little bit understated for this year. As a matter of fact, this could be the worst winter that we've seen in 25 years as far as colony loss.
Hi, my name is Ray. I am part of the University of Florida Master Beekeeper program. I've kept bees in Vermont. I've kept bees in South Carolina. And there's nothing more frustrating than that feeling when you get what's called a dead out. And the dead out is when you open up your hive and there's nothing in it. No bees, or the ones that are in there have died out. There have been some years that I feel like, hey, Ray, you've figured out the trick. You figured out how to avoid dead outs because I lose like only a few hives. And I think, yeah, I finally got this thing mastered. And then the next year comes around and bam, I'm right up to the average again. Now, if you're a brand new beekeeper, or rather new, or even thinking of getting into beekeeping, you have to understand that losing beehives is part of beekeeping. And this is something that sometimes it takes new beekeepers a little bit of time to get their head around. Because unlike if you were keeping, an animal, a cat, a dog, even fish, like if you don't expect to lose, if you had 3 cats, you don't expect to lose one of your cats every year to death. It's just a normal process. But in beekeeping right now, that's the reality. I watched a YouTube video myself just the other day that said that a lot of commercial beekeepers this year are expecting losses that are much higher than normal. Some of them are expecting losses upward of 50%. 50% of their hives might die over the course of the winter. And that got me thinking, how many beehives actually do die every year? And so I started to do some research. I went to government websites, I went to the Bee Informed Partnership, I went to some university websites where some studies have been done, like at Penn State, etc. And I have looked up and did a bunch of research and tried to compile it all together and figure out what percentage of beehives are lost or perish and don't make it through the year. And here's the number. Are you ready? The number that I came up with from last year of beehives that have perished throughout the year was 48%. 48%, almost half of the beehives, when I took all the numbers and put them together. Now, putting all the numbers together is kind of important. And while my research was not 100% bulletproof, I suppose I could have got a sampling from every single state, for example, to make it more bulletproof. But just on a surface level, I did some states, some northern states, some southern states, some research from some other United States conglomerate websites, and came up with this 48% of beehives are lost every year. Of the hives that are lost, the 48%, most of them are lost over the course of the winter, of course. And I'll give you a couple of reasons why that's a possibility. We'll talk about some things that we can do to reduce it. But I just first wanted to talk about, this is a reality. Like, this is something that we all face as beekeepers, and it can really be disheartening. And here's the real kicker. If you're a backyard beekeeper and you only have like 1 or 2 hives and you lose them, you've got none. And it just feels like for all of your effort and all the time that you put into it, now you've got to go back out and buy more hives in the spring. But I don't want you to feel like you're alone. I don't want you to feel like, oh, I'm doing something wrong, I'm doing something wrong, I'm doing something wrong. Because even if you're doing everything right, you can still lose hives. You can still have dead outs. And there's several reasons for that. And so let's talk about some of those reasons now. Reason number 1, well, the reason why we're losing so many hives, I think the number 1 reason, at least in my opinion, and again, looking at some of my research that I did for this video today, was of course the Varroa destructor mite. Some organizations claim that as many as 80% of all hive failures are due to the Varroa destructor mite. and its effect on the hive. And here's what happens. If we don't get those mite loads low during the spring and over the course of the summer, then it's too late. Like if they're already infected with the virus, and if the bee's immune system is already weakened by the Varroa destructor, going into the winter, they almost don't stand a chance. And if you discover that your mite load is super high in the fall, like September or October, and you say, oh, I got to treat, I got to catch up, I got to treat it, it's too late, because those bees were the bees that the queen had laid with winter physiology in order to make it over the course of the entire winter. And so they're already infected, and now the queen is not going to be laying nearly as much, and so your hive is already doomed. So without a doubt, one of the reasons why we're losing a lot of bees are the Varroa destructor mites. Please look on my YouTube channel. I have several videos on there about the Varroa destructor. As a matter of fact, I've got a little Varroa destructor here. I've got several videos here about this little fella. There's one on there about really bad Varroa mite practices. If you're a new beekeeper, I really encourage you to look at that, because I find so many beekeepers are hesitant to test for their Varroa mite. They just use hope as their strategy that they don't have it, and then they lose their bees. And so I'd like to encourage you to go over there and take a look at some of those videos. Full disclosure here, I had several of my hives where my mite load got away from me, and it was a little bit frustrating this year. Some of the treatments that I normally had found to be greatly effective really did nothing, or did very little to take care of the mites over the course of the late spring and summer. And so I went into fall with several hives that I kind of knew I was going to lose, because the mite loads had just gotten away from me. But it wasn't because I wasn't treating them. It wasn't because I wasn't trying an integrated pest management. I was doing everything that I possibly could to keep ahead of it, but I just found that the treatments were not working as well. So I'm going to have to really mix things up next year. I had some hives that I just couldn't get ahead of the mite load no matter what I did. And so that was definitely a contributing factor for me. Another reason why a lot of hive colonies die over the winter is starvation. You would think, oh, that should be obvious. But I think sometimes when I run into beekeepers and there's a mentality that, you know, my bees, they store honey, and so they know what they're doing, and that they can continue to forage all year round. If they run out of food, they can go out and get some more. And I think they're thinking maybe more like other animals, like a deer that will push the snow back in order to graze some grass underneath it or something like that. But a honeybee doesn't operate like that. When it gets cold in the winter and that hive gets in a cluster, the bees don't go out and forage. And even if they did, there's very little resources that are available to the hive during the winter months. And so starvation is another major reason that I saw in my research why honeybees die. So what do we do about that? Well, we can make sure that our bees are being fed all year. I'm holding a fondant patty because this is what I feed as emergency feed over the course of winter for my bees. Again, going into the fall, we've got to make sure that there's enough honey storage there. Equalizing our hives, taking away from some of the hives that have plenty of honey storage and giving it to those that don't have as much. Keeping a pollen source or a pollen substitute source out for our bees to be able to have a nutritional source coming in for pollen as well is very important to our bees, but making sure that our bees don't starve. A couple other reasons why we're losing so many hives right now. Another one is pesticide exposure. With the increased use of pesticides, with the increased use of, for example, mosquito repellents, or these companies that spray for mosquitoes, like the bees bring all of that stuff back into their hives, and that can affect their health. It can weaken them. It can cause them to not be able to reproduce as they should, or it can even kill out an entire colony. You don't have to look very far on the news to find reports of some counties that have decided, hey, for all of our residents, we're going to fly over and spray mosquito spray over the whole county. They killed all the bees in the area, and the beekeepers had to go back and sue the counties in order to get their losses back. And I think in most cases they did, and a lot of counties have stopped doing that. But it still does happen, especially on a consumer level in neighborhoods, etc. There's still a lot of spraying of pesticides. There's pesticides that farmers use on plants, but then there's also pesticides that a lot of homeowners use if you live in a more suburban or residential area. And this can be another leading cause for why our honeybee populations are declining. And then I guess the other major reason that I saw in my research why so many honeybees our colonies are dying is habitat loss. There's just, with clearing of land, etc., there's not as many places for the bees to be able to forage on. There's not as many places for the bees to be able to build nests as maybe there once were. Now, this is probably going to be more of a localized reason for that. If you live in an area that's growing, there's a lot of urbanization, then it would make more sense. But if you live way out in the country somewhere, then this one probably maybe it wouldn't affect you as much. But hi, this is Ray. If you find this video helpful, would you do me a favor by supporting my channel simply by hitting like or subscribe, or maybe even leaving a comment? This helps me to build my channel to the next 1,000 subscribers, and I appreciate it very much. I was shocked. I was surprised. I know personally, like if I can keep my losses at around 20%, 25%, I consider that a win. So that's 1 out of every 4 hives dying over the course of the winter. I consider, yeah, that's good. If I'm below that, if I'm at like 10%, just like 1 out of 10, that's like amazing. This year, this fall, I've already lost about 20% of my hives, and I haven't made it all the way through the winter yet. And so I was like, I got to see what's going on here. I'm kind of curious about why so many hives are dying. So I just wanted to encourage you today, if you're losing hives, yeah, there's things we can do. We can make sure we're taking care of the Varroa. We can make sure we have good enough nutrition inside of the hives. But at the end of the day, all beekeepers lose hives, and it's discouraging, and it's just part of the journey. This is why I always encourage new beekeepers to start with at least 2 hives if you can afford it, because you might lose one of them over the course of your first winter. Now, come spring, if that other hive does good, we'll split that hive, build it into 2 hives, and you'll be right back where you were. Maybe not even have to buy anymore if you are willing to try the adventure of splitting. But for most beekeepers, starting with 2 hives is a good way to ensure that you're going to at least always have some bees to keep. And so anyway, just a few thoughts, a little bit of research that I did on honeybee colony loss that I wanted to share with you today. I know it's the middle of winter, and so, we've got to, don't have a whole lot to show you going inside of the hives, but it's a good time to talk about these things. And maybe throughout the course of this year, by a little bit more planning, a little bit more initiative, maybe you and we can keep our hive losses as low as possible. Thanks for watching. God bless.